Hello everyone, this is Vishal. Good evening to everyone. First of all, I would be going through which are the topics which we have already covered, and those include the first 8 topics which are there in the GS main syllabus of social issues. Today we would be covering two important topics which are only left in the social issues section of GS mains, and those are social empowerment, regionalism, secularism, and communalism. One must know that all the sections that are in the social issues uh, section become important because of their relative importance whenever a current affairs based on such a question is being asked. So let's move to today's discussion, and that is social empowerment. First of all, social empowerment. So what is social empowerment? Okay, so for knowing what is social empowerment, one has to understand that what exactly is, how I would like to give a very brief intro of social empowerment. Okay, a brief intro of social empowerment would be what we call can be actually understood from the very idea of women empowerment that was given in economic survey. First of all, one must know that women empowerment when it comes women empowerment in what we call economic survey has been discussed. uh, Basically it's talk about three main pillars of what we call woman empowerment, and those three pillars are agency, outcome, and attitude. So one must understand what exactly is social empowerment. Okay, and for that I would like to what we call give an instance from the economic survey itself. For example, if a woman is made agency, so by agency means she is capable of taking decision. Okay, so empowerment basically would mean that the woman is able to take a decision, and that's why she, rather than being at the being only a beneficiary, rather than being only a beneficiary of the what we call social, any social what we call deliverables, she actually becomes an agency. So for example, if a direct benefit cash transfer is been put in the woman account, so she would be able to take a decision whether or not, or which exactly what we call which services to go for. And with all this, one would be able to understand that okay, so she is taking decision. Here again, I would like to talk an instance where women might be in control, however the actual control might be lying somewhere else. For example, if we talk about what we call this sarpanch pati phenomenon, what exactly happens in sarpanch pati phenomenon is that the woman would be in control, however the actual control would be exercised by the male member of the family, by the husband. So that actually phenomenon shows that agency might not be entirely true. So there must be some what we call other pillars also to actually define what is empowerment, especially women empowerment. So these other two pillars are what is attitude and outcome. Again, so as I said, if there is a phenomenon of sarpanchpati, and that is because of the attitude of a male, the male members of the society towards a woman in power. Basically what would happen is that the women who are placed in power, position of power, they usually won't be given the actual, their due what we call their due dignity or respect or obedience, that they what we call the authority that they actually should be given by the male member of the society. So as a result of which, even if the woman is saying something, the people might not be listening or might not be implementing it at the ground level. So that is where the sarpanch pati actually becomes very powerful, because he would be having certain degree of greater control when it comes to the male member of the society. So with this, actually you would be able to understand that along with agency, it is a very important, what we call it is essential component to have attitude as well. So if there is a proper attitude when it comes to what we call treatment of women, the agency itself would actually be become very pronounced and would be exercised in the true form. And then again, when when agency and what we call attitude is present, favorable, then yes, of course we could measure the probable what we call probable degree of empowerment through outcome. So there could be several types of outcome when it comes to women empowerment. I'm giving introduction here, brief introduction just before social empowerment. So basically, in women empowerment, what we call what we call the maternal mortality rate, okay, MMR, that is a good component. Institutionalized delivery, the weight, BMI component, how well it is going on, the sanitation, the sex ratio, the child sex ratio specifically, and then again, the economic survey came up with the idea of child sex ratio at birth. So, and the last birth, so that actually shows all this outcome when measured could actually, would be able to capture the very idea of agency and attitude and how it is working in Indian society. Here I have to say that, there are things, there is a beautiful quote actually, that we would be able to, we would be able to understand, things which are, could not be measured, that they are actually, the true measurement of, something. If so, for example, if there is, we say that women empowerment is there is a good MMR, the sex ratio is good and everything, but there are some things which could not be measured, but they would actually reflect very well how well the woman is empowered in the society, and that would include the attitude. Attitude is something that couldn't be actually, what we call, measured through some specific parameter, but however, this very, presence of attitude, how a woman is being treated in the society, could be a wonderful indicator of how well they are empowered. So with this, very idea of women empowerment, I would like to now move to social empowerment, which is a broader ambit again. So again, social empowerment could also have the three pillars of agency, attitude, and outcome. Usually when we talk about social empowerment, we tend to focus towards section of society which are at disadvantaged position, which belong to the lower strata. So when we are talking about agency, attitude, and outcome, we would be majorly focusing on those lower strata of people. So as I said, if you talk about whether they are agency, whether they are able to exercise, what we call, control, or not, whether they are just, what we call, just at the beneficiary of some social, program, or they are, what we call, they are taking call on their own. They have a choice, they can decide whether to go this or whether to go in that way. So that exactly will actually tell how well the social, lower social strata is empowered, and that would be, what we call, come in the agency section. Again, attitude, so as I said, you might be, aware that, there are certain, what we call, caste based, what we call, treatment that actually occurs when, people from different castes, although they might be, what we call, placed at good position, they might not be treated well, deserving, their, attitude, deserving, what we call, dignity, is not provided to them. So this all thing could be, and I could give you an idea of how people, what kind of attitude the people are actually having towards them. So that again, as I said, could be a beautiful indicator of how, well the people, from lower strata are being, socially empowered. So with this, I would say that there are, you could, come up with a definition in line with the of, what we call, women empowerment that I talked about. And again, I would request, and this is the first question to the viewers, that let me know what exactly, how would you define women social empowerment in terms of agency, attitude, and outcome. So with this, let's move to the next section and of the social empowerment topic, and it is what we call, the main component of social empowerment. So basically, if we talk about the main component of social empowerment, so it would include, what we call, three components, and it is, first is the designing effective services regarding primary requirements such as health, education, and employment. Second is ensuring accessibility and affordability to such public services, and third, ensuring greatest benefit of these services is acquired by vulnerable section of the society. So basically, if we talk about social empowerment, any policy, and again I would like to give a pro tip here, that whenever you are asked to talk about some policy, you must be knowing, you should be able to actually now be able to write about any policy that actually, is being asked in the examination without, what we call, without even ever coming across to it. This is because, most of the policies do have a similar framework when it comes to, what we call, its formulation. So if you talk about a social empowerment policy, I am giving you three main component again, and that is, first of all, we should be able to frame a social policy which is actually delivering the basic primary component, and that is health, education, information, skilling or employment. And then again we could actually talk about how what we call we have to ensure that it is actually accessible, one could actually access those services. And then of course the third pillar is that the greatest benefit of these services should actually be going to the section of the people who are actually what we call in need. Here again I would like to talk about this very wonderful campaign of the what we call government of the day, and that is give up campaign. The give up campaign was what we call was associated with the Pradhan Mantri what we call Ujjwala Yojana, in which person who are well off, who seems to have sufficient amount of money and do not want to can actually be well off even when without what we call the gas subsidy, the LPG subsidy that was provided, were requested to give up their subsidy so that it is being provided to someone who is more needy. So that actually shows that the entire policy architecture is being diverted, not diverted, is being tweaked, is being curated, so that it actually reaches to the most vulnerable section of the society. So with this you could actually, I'm just giving you hint so that you are able to come up with ideas, you are able to formulate policies as an administrator. When you are coming up to the what you call center, most of the time you would be actually asked to formulate policy itself. It is one of the prime tasks of a civil servant. So henceforth, if you are having a good idea of what exactly could be the main component of some policy that you are going to frame, that would actually help you to elaborate the work and make the things pretty easy and what we call presentable. So let's move to the next section, and that is first what we call parameter, and that is health. Here again I would like to what we call announce that I have covered the section of health education to a greater extent, to a very depth extent, because all these topics are pretty much important when it comes to GS mains as well as essay. So what I have to say, that be ready with the idea of health and education at all the levels. You should be having at least 1500 words ready about health and education at any time, because it is going to be helpful in your essay, in your ethics, in your GS as well as in your optional as well. So let's now move to the topic, that is health. Health, as we all know, is the WHO has defined that health is not only the state of being without what we call illness. It is not something that you are only not ill. It is also the state of mental and physical well-being. I have to emphasize on this point. Health is the a state of mental and physical well-being. Physical well-being, not being ill, are usually cared about as we move to the upper strata. However, mental well-being is something that is missing among the upper strata as well. So as and when people actually understand what does health mean, I believe they should become conscious at least, and should be taking good what we call steps so as to ensure their physical and mental well-being. Again, let's move to the availability of health as a services in India. So when we talk about availability of health, I have actually provided some graphs here. So you could actually see that there are graphs which are provided when it comes to the health. The first is the percentage of doctor. As you could see, the rural areas do not have sufficient number of what we call percentage of doctors. And when we talk about what we call percentage of population in urban areas, as you could see, split of doctors and population. See, the population here is more concentrated. On the other hand, what we call the doctors are pretty much less. So you could actually see the dichotomy here. On one hand, population is more concentrated in rural areas. On the very second hand, it is the doctors or the facilities, one of the parameters through which health facility is measured is pretty much less. So that actually shows that there is a skewed representation of doctors when it comes to rural areas. Again, if we talk about what we call availability, we could also talk about if we talk about the availability, we could talk about the human resources or human capital, we could talk about the finance, and we could also talk about the fixed capital here. Okay, by fixed capital I would mean the number of what we call doctors, and then what we call hospital beds and everything, equipment. So all this thing will be taken care in terms of availability. Here I would like to mention about what we call the fund has been something that is being usually said to be very much constrained. So I have to say that when it comes to funds in terms of what we call health, if we talk about other countries, you could actually see again what we call as a percentage of budget, and two things that has been actually talked about. For orange represent as a percentage of budget and as a percentage of GDP. Here you could see actually when it comes to developing countries only, South Africa is doing very well, China is also doing very well. However, when it comes to India, it is pretty much dismal. So you could see actually this is a comparison among the BRICS nation. So you must be very well aware of this, what we call development, what we call it's a conglomerate of nation, in which what you call five countries who are developing countries have come together in on developmental issues. So you could actually see that India is one of the country who is what we call, who is spending as a on health is least. And here I would like to add that one must be able to understand that health is a what we call something that is what we call responsibility of state government as well. So you must be able to make a distinction, and you must be able to understand how much total GDP center plus state is going to the health as a what we call subject. So that would actually give you a greater idea of how exactly health is being cared about in the country. Let's move to the next issue, and it is quality. You must be very well aware that there has been a mushrooming of medical college in which the quality of doctors that are coming up has gone down. Then there is a problem of quacks. Quacks are basically people who are not what we call actual doctors. However, through practice they have been what we call supplying drugs. They have been prescribing drugs to local population there. Again, quacks could be also a reason of high what we call antimicrobial resistance that is actually increasing in India, and that is because what we call the dosage that is being prescribed is not prescribed by a what you call person who actually knows medicine well. So it's just a what we call stop gap process, and henceforth it actually contributes to antimicrobial resistance only. There is actually something that I would like to what we call request the viewers again to actually go through, and it is the clinical establishment bill. Okay, if you get a chance, please go through this what we call this clinical establishment bill. Basically what happens in clinical establishment bill is that what we call is that basically there has been something what we call is that the government has actually thinking of coming up with some certain ways to ensure that there are certain benchmark which has to be followed when it comes to clinical establishment, especially dispensaries and maternity homes that are actually mushrooming up, so as to ensure that quality control is taken care of. Again, quality of healthcare, if we talk about the cleanliness in the medical premises is also one of the what we call thing that we could talk about. Again, here I would like to talk about this scheme called Lakshya IQ. It was actually just aimed to ensure that there is proper sanitation in the maternity ward. So if you could actually understand that how the entire quality aspect what actually should be coming. Again, I would like to talk about one of the idea from what we call idea from the GS4 ethics paper, and it is citizen charter. If government is able to what we call come up with, every hospital is able to what we call any idea of citizen charter. If they are able to come up with this very idea that okay, this what we call hospital must have a citizen charter, then again the quality deliverables could actually increase. Again, I have a request to the viewers that let me know in the comment section that what is citizen charter. I posted the question in the comment section as well, and those people who are looking it live could actually write it down and I will review them right away. Let's move to the next, and that is idea, and it is the disease burden. So what is disease burden? Again, if we talk about disease burden, I would request you to go through the what we call WHO, again, I would request you to go through the WHO definition of disease burden. So basically, disease burden would talk about how, what is the spatial distribution, or how exactly, what we call, what kind of disease are primarily, infecting the people living in a country. Again, I would like to request you to go through the Niti Aayog report as well. Oh, sorry, there is a report by Indian Medical Association, I believe, and so that actually talks about the level of health in every state. So I would request the viewers to go through those, what we call, that report as well. Again, if we talk about the disease burden in India, I would like to highlight one of the major, component, and that is communicable and non-communicable disease. Again, it's a request to the viewers to let me know what is communicable and non-communicable disease. Okay, so if you are able to understand that what exactly is communicable and non-communicable disease, just let me know it in the comment section. So basically, you could see is that the communicable disease was 53%, and now as we move to the current era, it has decreased to 27%. So that actually shows that the communicable disease has decreased. The level of injury has increased, of course, but not of that percentage. But when we go through the non-communicable disease, which are popularly known as NCD or lifestyle disease, it has actually, just increased, it has just doubled, if you could actually say. So that actually shows that the health disease burden in India is moving towards non-communicable disease. I would like you to request the viewers to, tell me more about what exactly is, what we call non-communicable disease. Give some prominent example of non-communicable disease in the comment section. One of the non-communicable disease is what we call, one of the non-communicable disease name is what we call blood pressure or high cholesterol and everything. Diabetes is another example of non-communicable disease. So please let me know more non-communicable disease in the comment section. Let's move to the next, what we call, idea that, here again I would like to give one of the important insights, is that you actually should be able to note that, if in India the 27.5% would also translate to more than a crore people, and then again, 60% is already a burden, so that actually would translate into crores of people. So India faces, two, simultaneously two problem on two fronts, and it is, one is of communicable form and another is non-communicable form. So, and again, one could not say that, non-communicable disease such as, hypertension or, high cholesterol or diabetes is something that is not being faced by the strata of the people, lower strata, which usually suffers through communicable disease. So it is not the case. Even, lower strata of people nowadays are facing a mix of communicable and non-communicable disease, and that is actually making the entire disease burden profile of India pretty much, what we call, difficult. So here again, what we call, Mr. Aditya has said a wonderful example of what we call non-communicable disease, and that is what we call cardiac arrest. Let's move to the next section, and that is health sector. So basically, whenever we talk about the health sector, challenges, I have to say, this very format of, how the, what we call, this entire, sector is being organized could be utilized in the education sector as well. So you must be knowing that there is primary, what you call, education, there is secondary education, and then there is higher education. So, this distinction, this very broad, what you call, process of organization between, what we call, various levels of, health could be applied even in what we call, when it comes to education as well. So let's talk about the major challenge. Again, I would like to note that mostly, when we talk about what, what we call, why do we study health sector, or why do we study any social issues? It is primarily to ensure that we are able to understand what challenges as an administrator we would be facing. So let's talk about the primary challenges when it comes to primary healthcare. So primary healthcare, what exactly happens is that, it is provided at community level. It is something very basic, it's more of a preventive form. Preventive would include all the vaccination, and usually when it comes to communicable disease, those are the diseases which are more related to preventive, what we call preventive disease. So basically it would be, again, preventive form, what you call child, and what we call maternal care. All this will actually come in what we call primary health care. So it is the first point of contact when it comes to community. So basically, what are the challenges that primary healthcare faces is that usually, in rural areas, as we have already seen, that the number of doctors that are present are less. Then again, the capacity of the hospital, and availability of drugs on time, as well as other facilities such as infrastructure of internet connectivity, or what we call storage, everything, all this thing could be actually missing. So that actually is a challenge when it comes to primary health care. Again, I would talk about this very wonderful, what we call working of tele medicine in Odisha is an example, how we actually could be, we could utilize the telecommunication network of what we call telecommunication network to ensure that we are providing them timely healthcare counseling. So let's move to the secondary healthcare. Secondary healthcare are usually, what we call referral from primary healthcare. Again, when we talk about secondary healthcare, and the tertiary healthcare is more specialized based, I have to say that usually secondary healthcare, there is a more concentration of government. Again, even tertiary healthcare, there is a more concentration of government. However, since the resources are constrained, the number of what we call hospitals catering to secondary healthcare or tertiary healthcare decreases. So basically that actually leads to very what we call shortage again of manpower and resources, and heavy burden is actually what we call is being faced by the secondary healthcare and tertiary healthcare. Again, if you move to the cost, again, they usually nowadays, to keep the nurses or to keep the staffs with them all that full time, they are not able to pay them the right amount of money. So when it comes to urban areas, usually government hospital tend to lose on the human capital that is present, and it usually goes to the private sector. So that actually what we call shows that the secondary healthcare challenges and tertiary healthcare challenges. Again, I have to say that the primary healthcare challenges is actually act as a gate. If you are able to what we call control the disease at this level, so then the pressure at secondary and tertiary would be less. Again, as I said, I have to talk about this Ayushman Bharat scheme, and that actually says that the primary healthcare center would be turned into health and wellness care. So my next question to the viewers is, what is what we call health and wellness center? Oh, I have to say that thank you for asking this question, that what is CHC and DSC. I have to say that CHC stand for Mr. Satyam, CHC stand for community health care, and DH stand for district hospital. So basically you could actually understand that CHC and DH are just mere name of type of hospital. Let's move to the next part, and this is Ayushman Bharat, Arogya Bharat. This is a mega scheme which was launched in the last budget, and it is being, as we could actually talk about the first 100 days, it has been quite successful when it comes to, Ayushman Bharat scheme. So basically what actually happens in Ayushman Bharat scheme is that it is aimed to, what we call overcome some challenges. The first challenges that it tried to overcome is the out-of-pocket expenditure. You could actually see that it is a mega component when it comes to out-of-pocket expenditure, and it is 67%. And again, you could actually see that the government-sponsored health insurance is also pretty much low in coverage. Again, if we talk about the health insurance penetration, you could actually see that the amount of people that is being covered is not what we call less than half. Again, the claim is even less than 1/10. So that actually shows that the insurance what we call penetration is pretty much less. So that actually would these two, basically you could these two very what we call first two box is to actually make you understand why this health what we call insurance was required. Ayushman Bharat basically the main, again, as one of the, student has asked, how this actually, how we should be able to, there are so many schemes which we should actually focus. So I have to say that please go through the budget, speech, so that you are able to scheme up which are the which are the important schemes to be followed. So we usually, when it comes to, what we call budget, budget will actually give you an idea that which are the important schemes and which are the flagship policy of the government. Here I have mentioned the main important, what we call important points related to, what we call Ayushman Bharat. You could actually just go through. There's funding scheme is also shown. You could actually understand that given the funding scheme, it is a centrally sponsored scheme and not a central sector scheme. Again, I have a request that let me know what is the difference between centrally sponsored scheme and central sector scheme. So what are the challenges? Again, as I said, an administrator, we should be able to anticipate the challenge and work on the solution. So basically it has talked about what are the challenges that we actually could be, what we call, which we could be facing. Again, you must be aware that, before Ayushman Bharat, there was a scheme RSBY, Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, and what we call it also was to provide health insurance. However, what were the distinction? It has been, what we call, made among 4 major section, and it is being discussed in the slide. So with this, let's move to the next section, and that is universal healthcare. Universal healthcare is a very much, what we call universal healthcare is something, that is being, what we call something that has been the goal of, towards which the entire, health policy in countries are moving towards. Again, I would like to say that, universal healthcare doesn't mean that the entire population has to be, what we call has to be covered by some sort of insurance. Universal healthcare is more of, what we call some kind of an idea in which a section of the people, usually the needy section of the people, should be able to go through, what we call institutionalized medical healthcare. They should be able to avail healthcare without pushing themselves in poverty. So basically, universal healthcare would mean toward affordability, availability, and quality, rather than, covering the entire, population. So that actually would be, universal healthcare. Again, you would be having your own definition of universal healthcare, in which the number of services that you want to cover, for example, communicable and non-communicable disease, and then the total population that you want to actually cover. So that actually would be covering the very idea of, what we call universal healthcare. So basically it would be a 2-dimensional idea to be conceived. I would request you to go through the universal healthcare ideas which is present in Mexico, and then which is now being implemented in China. And just let me know what are the important and, what we call, some good takeaways which could be applied in India. Let's move to the next section, and before that I would like to thank Harsh Sonu, who has wonderfully, what we call, who has correctly written, what the difference between centrally sponsored and central sector scheme. Thank you. Let's move to the next section, and that is what we call the other slide, and that is as we would be, talking about the next section, and that is education. When we talk about education, we have to understand that mostly, what education would be mostly, what we call the slides I would be uploading in the section very soon. I'll be posting a link, because the slide is being just the next slide is not being put, so we'll just put it in the next in the lecture itself. Let's move to the next section, and that is education. As I've already talked about, that education, when it comes to primary section, then secondary section, and senior secondary, or the higher education section, is something that has to be, different challenges would be there. When it comes to different challenges, if we talk about the primary education, now that the enrollment is being, completed, we are actually near about 100% enrollment. We are now more looking towards, gender parity and outcome based when it comes to primary education. When it comes to secondary education, we are looking towards vocational, inculcating vocational education as well. Due to certain, challenges, vocational education has not been given what we call good support, due to which what actually is happening is that people are not able to seamlessly transfer from one vocation to another, or vocation to back to college, and college to vocation. So that seamless interoperability is absent. Again, if you talk about other section, and that is what we call higher education. The higher education is somewhere where actually the parity is not being taken care of. Again, when apart from parity, the industry net industry skill that is required is not being well met by the education sector, that is the type of education that we are providing. As we finish this education sector, let's move to the next section, and that is regionalism, communalism, and secularism. So when we talk about this section, and that is the last section of what we call last section of social issue, and it is regionalism, secularism, and communalism. So I have to say that you must be noticing that there are three main, what we call problem. Sorry, all these three things have the similar suffix, and it is ISM. Basically, ISM would means that it is an ideology. It is something which is being conceived in the idea format. So yet again, I have to say that what we call when it comes to regionalism, what exactly it means. Basically, regionalism is what actually happens in regionalism is that one of the identity that get pronounced is the what we call region, the region in which you are living. Both of this would actually somehow be related to identity. If we talk about all these three, the problem would be more towards an identity, which identity you are asserting and which identity you should be asserting. When it comes to regionalism, what actually happens is that the regional identity is being asserted rather than the identity which should be actually what we call, which identity is getting in asserting, and which should be asserted. So basically, if there is a difference what we call between these two, the what we call this two identity, then there actually exists a problem. So if a person is projecting its national identity, and then yet of course accommodating the regional identity as well, then there is no conflict. But if there is assertion of only regionalism, then yes, of course it could lead to conflict. One of the prominent example in recent times in which regionalism has been what we call has caused some problem, and that is Gokhaland issue when it comes to West Bengal. Thankfully, it has simmered down, and the economy and the other social activity has now become normal. Let's move to the other idea, and other idea that we would be talking about, and it is secularism. When it comes to secularism, what we call, what actually happens in secularism is that it's an ideology in which the social structure, the society structure is removed from the control of religion. So religion is not something that is dictating the non-religious sector. Non-religious sector would include polity, education, then employment. All the section are free from religious control. Then that is the idea of secularism. So I have to say that secularism is an idea which is a unique concept when it comes to India. So I have a request to the viewers that let me know what does idea of secularism in India entails. So again, I'd like to give a hint that please go through the S.R. Bommai judgment of 1991, in which the Supreme Court of India gave the definition of secularism, the idea of secular nation, what exactly the constitution has entailed. Basically, the constitution has also not defined it well, and henceforth Supreme Court had to intervene and define what exactly secularism means. So I have a request for everyone that please go through the S.R. Bommai judgment for sure. Here I would like to take a I would like to move to the question that the one of the student has posed, and that is how to define reason. So basically, region again it's a very notion. So region could be based on similar linguistic identity. similar, what we call a cultural identity, similar, festivals. So basically region could be as small as a village, and it could actually span to beyond India as well. So you could actually have an identity which is South Asian. If you move to some other countries, you could actually be facing, some kind of discrimination or some kind of, differential treatment being, South Asian. Then, that actually would, so you could actually understand that there is no concrete and fixed definition of region. You could actually just be, what we call be, it is a notion which could actually just change from where you are placed. I hope this has actually, what we call clarified your doubt that how would you define reason. Again, which judgment that I am talking about, and it is the SR Bommai judgment. It is a famous judgment in which, what we call Supreme Court gave the definition of secular. So basically, if you talk about what we call the definition of secular, that was given in this SR Bommai judgment. It is a very popular judgment, and this judgment is often quoted around the precedent rule as well. So I would request everyone that please go through the SR Bommai judgment, in details, especially the secular part and those related with the precedent rule. Let's move to the next section, and that is communalism. So I have to say that India is a secular country, and we have been, what we call intertwining. We have been taking care of various religions, irrespective of, what their, what we call whatever, what we call how they used to mingle. Everything actually has been so well, intertwined, that we have been, to a greater extent having living very peacefully without any, what we call collision, without any problems, and that has been possible due to the social fabric that was existing. However, even today, due to certain, what we call fringe elements, we do have the problem of communalism. And that is, if we talk about communalism, what actually happens is that, there is an identity. The belongingness to a community becomes the most pronounced form of identity. As I said, whenever the idea of regionalism comes, whenever the idea of secularism comes, whenever the idea of communalism comes, all these three is related to which identity a person or a group of person is actually asserting, and which identity he should have asserted so as to ensure peaceful coexistence. In communalism, you could actually refer to these three stages: the first stage, the second stage, and the third stage of communalism, which has been, talked about in the Bipin Chandra book of history. According to him, the first stage of communalism is quite liberal in form. What actually happened is that people who belong to certain religion tend to identify their secular interests by mean political interests, educational, financial interests, as well as same. The second form of, what we call communalism is when the people from one, what we call one religion tend to have some kind of interest, secular interest again, only because they belong to some religion, distinct from other religion. So basically, one religious community has having, ABCD interests. The others religious community would be having FGHIJ. So basically, these two would be having different set of interests. What happens in the third and the last stage of communalism, which is the most, what we call pronounced form, the most aggressive form of communalism, and that is when one religious community considers its secular interest as antithetical, as opposite to the other community's secular interest. So basically, there would be conflict of interest when it comes to one political interest, educational interest, or, what we call financial interest of one community with respect to another. So that could actually just intermingle religion, which is something which is mostly considered as, private to an individual, and something, when it comes to, again, something that is being, that actually preaches of peace, it becomes one of the factor of division in society. Again, I have to say that, when it comes to religious based identity, usually what happens is that, democracy actually, becomes vulnerable to communalism because of the type of politics that we preach. The new kind of identity on which, we could actually go for votes have not come up. Developmental based identity has not actually come up in a pronounced manner, and today also, mobilizing people based on religion is pretty easy. So as a result of which, communalism is more pronounced in developing countries. Again, it is not only religion based, it is again a form of identity. So I have to say, when it comes to communalism in India, it is based on what we call religion. When it comes to Malaysia or Malay Peninsula, it is based on race. And when it comes to Sudan and all this African countries toward the east, it is based on tribes. Let's move to what are the possible solution that you could actually what we call suggest when it comes to communalism. Again, it is something that could be actually quoted even in ethics censor, or something that could be actually talked about even in uh, what we call the essay interview as well. So it's something very important. So communalism, solution that we could actually propose would quite depend upon innovation. If a person is innovative, usually the district magistrate is responsible to ensure that the communal violence decreases. So there could be various preventive measures and various responsive measures that we could go for to ensure that communalism is curbed. So first, let's talk about the preventive measures. The preventive measures that we could actually take is that equal treatment by the state authorities to people belonging to all religion. We have to ensure that every religion, the people belonging to every religion, must feel that the state is neutral. If the state is neutral, then communalism is bound to be low. The next thing that we could actually go for is ensuring there is a common space, there is regular intermingling, there is regular dependency in the form of commerce and other cultural exchanges. We could also promote sports. Sports is one of the what we call wonderful combining factor, bonding factor when it comes to communalism. I have to mention that Muhammad Salah, who is a player of Egypt national team, he plays for the team of what we call he plays in the European League through Liverpool. Basically, it was seen that in that region in which the Liverpool club belongs to, there was a decrease in hate crime as soon as Mohamed Salah joined the what we call team of Liverpool. So that actually shows that sports has a wonderful impact in terms of ensuring that hate crime of communalism goes down. Apart from that, we could actually have regular talks, interfaith dialogue, what we call between prominent leaders. We could actually go for more greater what we call education, health opportunities, poverty alleviation, so that the mobilization on the form of communalism or communal identity is not possible. Again, when we talk about this, all these things should be implemented in the long term. It is something again which is what we call is a part of developmental process. However, when it comes to response on the outbreak of communal rights, it's very important that we deploy the force. We ensure that in an area, the area is kept sanitized, information is properly channeled, fake news is being curbed, internet traffic is being brought down, and again, force should be very much neutral to the people. It should not take sides so that people feel what we call some form of cheating. They should not feel intimidated again, and henceforward, then as I said, then it will ensure that the communalism is curbed down to the minimum. I have to say that communalism was also recently seen in Sri Lanka, in which there were series of bomb blasts in the Easter Sunday affecting the Christian community. So that actually shows that communalism and development is something what we call which goes hand in hand. Whenever there is a lack of development, it get pronounced in some other form, and it get what we call it get pronounced, it get visible in the form of communalism. So with this, we have completed all the three important what we call topics of the last chapter, and it is regionalism, secularism, and communalism. Again, I would like to give a recap of the earlier lectures that we have given, the prominent points. As I have said, let's move to the first slide. And as I said, you must be going through the previous year paper at any cost. Freeze your book list. Important books that you should be covering, I have already told. And again, once what we call you have read any source, please revise it at the very same instance. so that the notes making, notes are pretty much, what we call, are not that much bulky. If you read and revise, at least revise 2-3 times, that will actually reduce the amount of facts that you actually have to remember at the end. Then your notes should be pretty much crisp. It won't be something that is very bulky, which needs, further, what we call, reduction in volume. So that actually would help you. So I have please revise at least 2-3 times once you have read the notes, and then only go for notes making. As I said, put, and again, keep a tab on the current affairs. Current affairs forms a very important, what we call, substance to actually just supplement your answer, as well as it could also be the source of your question. And the pro tip which I have discussed, and that is to add scientific or technological solution whenever it comes to social issues. And again, if you talk about communalism, we could actually have, interfaith dialogue in the form of technology could actually make, interfaith dialogue reach to number of people. We could actually have helpline, we could actually have call center to ensure that, a specific, what you call, number. We could actually, what you call, monitor everything through round the clock drones. So that actually shows that, if you take steps, through technology, it would actually, help you, it will aid your administration at any cost. Again, as I said, whenever we talk about answer writing, you have to answer your question in 3 parts, and that includes the introduction, body, and conclusion. As a pro tip, I have to say that introduction and conclusion should be framed at the very same moment, so that you are able to, come up with a very coherent looking answer, which is, what we call, which suits the palate of the invigilator. Again, when it comes to body, I just, gave an example of, what we call, Muhammad Salah. So for example, let me show you how it could be actually, what we call, shown in the form of graph. So for example, if this is a graph, and you're plotting the hate crime here, okay, you're plotting the hate crime rate here, you could actually show that, this is the point of time when, what we call, Salah joins a team. You could actually show that areas where there is no, what we call, Muslim player in the team, there is no, what we call, no Muslim player, then you could actually showcase that, what we call, there has been no dip in hate crime. However, in case of, area around Liverpool, it has actually gone down after, what we call, the joining of Muhammad Salah. So you could actually see that how easy is it, how easily you could actually incorporate a graph to say something, facts, figures, and data, and then, your presentation would be superb. So as and when you write your answer, read it again, think which data, which facts you have written could be actually, supplemented, or which could be replaced through a graph, and that would make your answer very wonderful. Again, just now I have summarized all the pro tips that you could be utilizing. I have to say that social issues form a very important part of the mains, and 2 or 3 questions are bound to come. So with this, I have completed the entire social issues section of, what we call, GS1. You could actually reach me out through the comment section, and I would be reviewing your question as well. Thank you for joining me throughout the lecture. All the best for mains.